Welcome to Behind the Counter Pharmacy and Beyond, the podcast where real stories meet real business lessons. In the last episode, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Bushra Effendi, an advanced pharmacist with a passion for women's health and menopause care. We talked about the realities of HRT, navigating misinformation, and what pharmacy teams need to know to better support women. If you missed it, go back and listen to episode 13, especially if you want to expand your services and confidence around menopause care. But today, we're stepping into what I call the messy middle of running a business. Yes, staffing. Because no matter how good your services are, or how brilliant your ideas might be, if the wrong people are on your team, or the right ones are unsupported, your business will suffer. This is one of the most personal and revealing episodes I've done because I've made nearly every mistake you can make when it comes to hiring and managing a team. I've lost amazing staff, I've hired badly, and I've had to rebuild from the ground up. So if you're struggling with team dynamics, burnout, loyalty, or just want to stop losing your best people, this episode's for you. Let's start by burning some of the common myths I hear all the time. Things that sound clever in a business textbook, as I'd put it, but can quietly destroy small business from the inside. The first one is the saying that says everyone is replaceable. I've heard this many times, and I used to say it myself. And here is the thing. I still believe a version of it. There's a saying I hold on to even now: no one is bigger than the business. And it's true. The moment any one person, even the most talented, becomes untouchable or starts holding the business hostage, that's dangerous, and you should never allow this as a leader. No single person should control the entire rhythm of your business or be above accountability. But here is where I got it wrong. Believing that no one is bigger than the business doesn't mean everyone is replaceable. Because some people, the burden bearers, the culture carriers, may not be irreplaceable on paper, but they're invaluable in practice. They carry the heart of the team. They lead without a title. They keep things together when everything feels like it's falling apart, when other people step away. And when those people leave, the impact isn't just logistical, it's emotional, cultural, sometimes even financial. So, yes, no one is bigger than the business, but don't confuse that with thinking your best people can be easily replaced. If you treat everyone like they're disposable, you will lose the very ones who were holding things together in the first place. The second myth is if your systems are strong, the people don't matter. I'll be honest, I bought into this one too. In fact, there was a season where I was obsessed with building out the perfect SOPs, flowcharts, checklists, automated systems. I thought I even could get the structure right. We could slot everyone in and the business would just run like a machine. But here's what I learned the hard way. The people are the system because systems don't notice when a regular patient's not quite themselves. They don't pick up on the subtle signs of grief, or that a carer looks overwhelmed, or that a customer hasn't collected their medicines over a few days. Systems don't say, let me stay back an hour and make sure that the delivery gets out. They don't swap shifts, cover for someone in crisis, or bring positivity to a tough Monday morning. People do. People do these things, and not just any people, the right people who care, who carry the standard, people who aren't just doing a job, but who take ownership and live the values of the business. If you have solid systems but the wrong people, those systems won't protect your business, they'll expose it. Every crack becomes more obvious, every missed handover, every process skipped, because structure without substance collapses. And in contrast, when you have great people, even when the systems aren't perfect, they fill the gaps. They find a way. They don't wait for permission. They act with intention. So now I build systems for people, not around them. I see the SOPs as tools, but the team is the foundation. And if you get that balance right, you build something that doesn't just function, it flourishes. And finally, the third myth I've heard a lot of is that managing staff isn't a big deal. No, they'll just do their job. Well, this one's especially dangerous for founders like myself, people who started with nothing, built from scratch, and got used to doing everything ourselves. You fall into this mindset of, I've done it all. I've figured it out, so surely I can just hire someone, show them the ropes, and they'll get on with it. But here is the truth. People aren't plug and play. They're not just another resource on a spreadsheet. They come with their own experiences, their own fears, motivations, and ways of working. They need more than just a job description to function. They need leadership. They need training. so they feel confident and competent in the role. They need clarity, so they know what success looks like. They need feedback, so they can course correct before issues escalate. They need encouragement because praise fuels performance. And finally, they need boundaries, so standards stay high and consistent. And here's the part no one tells you. If you don't lead your team, the business will start leading itself. And when the business leads itself, it's not heading towards excellence, it's heading towards chaos. And I have seen this firsthand. Everyone start doing what they think is best for the business. The standards drift, communication breaks down, and culture quietly crumbles without anyone noticing until it's too late. These are beliefs and blind spots that nearly cost me the very thing I poured years of my life into. Over the years, I have lost amazing staff because I didn't act quickly enough. I let issues linger, hoping they'd resolve themselves. And by the time I stepped in, well, the damage was already done. I've hired badly because I was desperate. I told myself, we just need a body behind the counter, instead of thinking, does this person fit our culture and values? In fact, at some point, we didn't know what our culture and values were, and that is absolutely crucial to the success of any business. And I've had to rebuild more times than I care to admit, not because we didn't care, not because people were bad, but because we didn't have the structure, the leadership to help these people succeed. And here is the painful truth. When people underperform or walk away, it's often a reflection of leadership gaps in your organization more than personal flaws. That was a hard pill to swallow. But once I accepted it, I could finally start changing it. This episode is me saying, don't wait until it's too late. Don't let these myths guide your leadership. Let's get real about what it takes to build a team that not only performs, but stays. In real life, especially in an independent pharmacy, these beliefs can quietly destroy a business, and trust me, they can. Here are some facts to consider. 86% of small business owners say hiring the right staff is their biggest challenge, and I can relate with that. A toxic hire can cost over tens of thousands of pounds in direct and indirect losses. Very easily, that could happen. Businesses with engaged teams see 21% more profit, and they keep customers 3 times longer. That is very true. I've lived all of these, and as I said in a previous episode, the best and worst part of running a business is the people. If you get this right, it's a game changer. If you get it wrong, it can cost you everything. Staffing isn't a back office task like we all think it is. It's a frontline growth strategy, and it all starts with understanding yourself as a leader. There are different types of leaders. Some are natural organizers. They create order, manage systems, track KPIs, they make things tick. Others, like myself, are visionaries. We see where the business could go, but we need the right people around us to make that vision real. Neither is better, but you must know who you are. Because if you're a visionary trying to do everything yourself, you'll burn out. And if you're task focused without thinking about long term strategy, you hit a ceiling. Knowing the kind of leader I was helped me understand what kind of support I needed. And that awareness hit hard when we opened our second branch. When we opened our second pharmacy, everything changed. Went from a close knit team of just 3 to suddenly managing over a dozen staff members almost overnight. And let me tell you, I wasn't ready. Now, I thought I was. I'd managed the pharmacy before. I'd trained new staff, dealt with customers, and handled the day to day. But this was different. This wasn't just about dispensing and SOPs anymore. It was about HR policies, conflict resolutions, disciplinaries, burnout, navigating personalities with different values, different communication styles, and completely different work ethics. I've touched on this slightly in a previous episode as well. It was a whole new level of leadership, and we were completely unprepared for it. We had no onboarding processes, no structure for accountability. All we had at the time was just goodwill and hustle, like I call it. And as I'd come to realize, that only takes you so far in business. I talked about this shift in detail in a previous episode. If you haven't listened to that one yet, I'd recommend going back to it, especially if you're planning to expand or hire your first team. Because what we got right and what we got very wrong holds lessons that I believe every business owner needs to hear. At the time, our goal was simple, at least it was on paper: maintain the culture and performance across both branches. And as simple as that sounds, the reality is that we were growing fast and flying blind. We had no structured hiring process, we had no real onboarding, no formal training, and worst of all, we had no system for accountability. We didn't have appraisals, no regular check ins, no clear performance expectations. We were winging it, quite honestly, constantly making things up as we went along. And while that might work in the early years of running a business, once you have a team, it's a recipe for erosion. We avoided awkward conversations. We let things slide, thinking it's just a one off. We told ourselves they're probably just going through something, or we'll deal with it later. These are things that will resonate with a lot of business owners, especially in independent pharmacy. But that later never came. And here's what I've learned over time the hard way. What you allow becomes the culture. When lateness, for example, isn't addressed, it becomes the norm. When careless mistakes are overlooked, standards drop. And when someone treats a colleague poorly and no one says anything, that silence becomes permission for them to carry on. It created resentment. It lowered the bar for everyone. And it drove our best people, the ones who did care, straight out of the door. Because when there's no fairness, no consistency, and no clarity, people lose trust. They stop trying, they disengage. And once that culture sets in, turning it around is like trying to stop a moving train. We thought avoiding conflict was being kind, but accountability isn't harsh, it's healthy. It shows your team you care enough to be honest, to protect the culture, and it keeps your best people engaged. That mistake I made, not holding people accountable in a structured, fair, and consistent way, cost us more than I can measure, not just in money, but in moral trust and the kind of talent you can't afford to lose. We knew things had to change. The first thing we did was stop pretending problems would fix themselves. We began having real, honest conversations, not just about what wasn't working, but about what we as leaders were failing to provide. We introduced proper appraisals, nothing fancy, just a consistent way to check in, set expectations, give feedback, and actually listen. We started building a framework around training, not just the clinical stuff, but soft skills too: communication, initiative, teamwork. And we made accountability a shared value within the organization, not just top down rule, because people don't rise to unclear standards, they rise to clear expectations, backed by fair support. But here is what really surprised me. As we began to improve our processes, it wasn't the systems alone that saved us, it was the people. Yes, again, the people. The ones who stuck around when it was hard, the ones who went above and beyond without ever being asked, the ones who cared for the business like it was their own. I call them the burden bearers. They're rare, but when you find them, they become the heartbeat of your team. They're the ones who show up early, stay late, they solve problems before you even know they exist. They don't just clock in and out, they carry the vision with you. They see the cracks and try to fill them. They lead by example. They take ownership in a way no contract or job specification can ever describe. We've been lucky over the years. We've had a few of these, and I'm grateful. Some of them are still with us today. But here is the part that still stings. We've lost some of them too. Not because they didn't care, but because we didn't do enough to support them. I assumed wrongly that passion was enough, that because I had a vision, others would follow instinctively. But that's not how it works. Passion without structure burns people out. Even the strongest team members, the burden bearers, they need support. They need clarity. They need to be trained, encouraged, and recognized. Because think about it, if you don't protect them, they'll carry the load silently until one day they just can't anymore. And when they go, it's not just a staff loss, it's a culture shift. It's a gap that you feel. So take it from me. When you find a burden bearer, do everything in your power to keep them, because they're the ones who turn vision into reality. Yes, I've lost amazing staff. I've hired badly and I've had to rebuild more times than I care to admit. Not because we didn't care, but because we didn't know what we were doing when it came to hiring, training, and managing people. I want to be real with you in this episode, not just inspirational, but instructional. because these aren't just stories, they're warning signs. So let me walk you through three of the biggest staffing mistakes we made and what they cost us. And hopefully you can learn from these and avoid the same mistakes. Here's the first one: hiring the wrong people. We once hired a staff member who came highly recommended, very experienced, strong on paper, interviewed exceptionally well. But deep down, in all honesty, I knew she wasn't the right fit for our culture. Still, I convinced myself we could make it work. We needed help, and I let urgency override instinct. From day one, the signs were there. She didn't gel with the team. She pushed back on systems, but I kept making excuses. I thought she just needs time to adjust and settle in. Meanwhile, the ripple effects were starting. Team morale began to dip. Other staff members were quietly picking up a slack. Resentment started building. It got to the point where I was having constant meetings, constant performance conversations. All of those were energies that should have been spent growing the business. But here is the worst part. Once she was in, the culture changed. A negative presence affects more than productivity. It poisons trust. It creates friction where there was once flow. And even though I actually made the decision to let her go, it came after months of emotional drain, low morale, and unnecessary stress, to be honest, for the whole team. And what was the result? We lost momentum in that period. We nearly lost good team members, and I had to rebuild relationship and trust that never should have been broken. And what I learned from this is not to ignore your gut. Never just hire because someone looks good on paper or comes highly recommended. And don't delay the hard decisions once it's clear it's not working, because the longer you wait, the more damage is done. And it's usually your best people who pay the price. The second mistake that I made was not training the right people. Now, there were times we actually got it right with the recruitment, at first at least. I remember one of our apprentices. She was just 17 years old. She was very sharp, smart, loyal, and eager to learn. She had the potential, real potential. Before long, she was running an entire department alone. Now, that might sound impressive, but it wasn't a promotion. It was a failure of leadership. That department should have had three people in it, but we were stretched, understaffed, and focused on growth. So we just let her get on with it. No backup, no development plan, no real support. She worked her heart out, honestly. But the cracks began to show. She was stressed, overwhelmed, and eventually she left. Even the right people will leave if they feel unsupported. Passion without structure leads to burnout, and you don't just need the right person, you need the right environment. Looking back at it, it wasn't her fault. It was our fault. The organization failed her and we lost a great staff member. The third mistake I made is taking burden bearers for granted. Some people don't just do their job, they carry the business. One team member in particular comes to mind. She had been with us for years. She was the go-to person, the one who made sure things didn't fall apart. She stayed late without being asked. She picked up what others missed. But as we grew, we started to lean on her too much. Without realizing it, we kept adding more and more to her plate. And because she never complained, we assumed she was fine until she wasn't. Mistakes started happening. She began to second guess herself. The pressure started to chip away at her confidence. And then she handed in a resignation. It felt like a gut punch. Don't confuse silence with strength. These burden bearers would tend to keep quiet when they're stressed. Even your strongest players need support. The higher the expectation, the deeper the appreciation should be. I also made another costly mistake trying to be fair by keeping everyone on the same pay scale. But fair doesn't always mean equal. When effort, training, and result aren't rewarded, best people feel unseen. They either become disengaged or they leave. So now we've introduced the structured pay scale, one that rewards contribution, not just job titles. It's one of the best changes we've ever made. That season taught me a tough truth. You don't just need good people. You need the right people in the right role, led the right way. Every strong team needs a mix of three key players: visionaries, those who dream big and challenge the status quo; fixers, the ones who spot issues early and solve problems quietly; and doers, the steady hands who show up consistently and get things done. When you're missing one of these, your team wobbles. And if you, as the leader, don't know which one you are, you risk hiring people who reflect your strengths but amplify your weaknesses. Or worse, like I did, you just hire people to plug gaps without thinking about how they fit into the bigger picture. We had no structure, no map. We just filled vacancies. We didn't build a team. So here's what we changed. We introduced structured interviews that assessed not just skills, but values and team fit. We built a clear onboarding process so new hires didn't feel lost. We defined job roles and introduced a transparent pay policy so expectations were aligned. We added regular coaching and feedback, not just to fix problems, but to build people up. We created a pathway for recognition and progression, especially for the burden bearers, the ones who quietly hold everything together. And we became intentional about balancing the team, making sure visionaries, fixers, and doers could thrive together. It didn't fix everything overnight, but gradually the weight started to lift. The culture got healthier, and we became a team again, not just a collection of people doing their jobs. This isn't a one time fix. Building the right team, leading well, and maintaining a healthy culture is not a box you tick just once. It's an ongoing process, a cycle that becomes part of your organizational DNA. You constantly look back, reviewing, adjusting, rebuilding, but the key is knowing when to step in, what to change, and how to lead through it. Let's wrap up this episode with some key takeaways, some core lessons that I've learned the hard way over the years. 1. Your leadership style shapes your staffing needs. Know yourself. Don't build a team that mirrors your blind spots. 2. Vision without structure leads to burnout. Even the most passionate people need support, training, and clarity. 3. Hiring the wrong person costs more than just money. It drains energy, lowers morale, and can quietly break your culture. 4. You need a balanced team. Visionaries to dream, doers to build, fixers to hold it together. And finally, burden bearers are rare. When you find them, invest in them, support them, reward them, and don't assume they'll always carry the load. In the next episode, I'm going to open up about a year and nearly lost everything. It was the hardest year of my life. Staff wages, supplier bills, banks knocking, and I had to face it all while pretending everything was fine on the surface. But there's a way through it, and I'll share how we survived. I've titled it Surviving a Financial Crisis, My Toughest Year in Business. If this episode resonated with you, please send it to someone who needs to hear it. Another pharmacy owner, a team lead, or someone who feels stuck trying to build the right team. Follow @_BTC podcast. Leave a review, and if you're struggling with staffing, leadership, or your team culture, reach out to me to see how Daughter Consulting can help. Thank you for listening, and remember, the best prescription for success is resilience.